and today we're going to be diving into something that I've been meaning to do for some time, and this is the day. We are going to look into databases today, and more importantly, how we hook into a database with Vue 3 so that we can go beyond the simple sort of prototypes where we have sort of local data, but we want to do something sort of more interactive as far as like really being able to save data and have basically users be able to save their data and basically like share that. And so yes, we're going to learn about that today. That's what we are going to do. So let me just, all right. So typically I guess it's a couple of things to get started. The first of which is that I personally don't have a lot of experience when it comes to back-end technology. So I've dabbled around certainly with like different backend pieces of like Firebase and those sort of things, but like as far as really deep diving into Postgres and SQL, like I know just enough to be dangerous and like make a couple queries and stuff, but I would absolutely not consider myself a backend expert. And more importantly, like this stuff is still like not exactly in my wheelhouse. I still personally prefer front end when a lot of things, but when it comes to building applications, databases and these sort of services are important to know about. And especially nowadays when we have third-party services that allow it to make it a lot easier so that we don't have to learn about all like the hosting and those sort of things. I think the barrier of entry is a lot lower than it used to be when I first started. So we're going to go ahead and get started with a service that I've heard a lot of really good things from my coworker Jason Lengstorf. If you haven't check out his Twitch stream is Learn with Jason. And so he talks a lot about Hasura and how great it is to work with it. So we're going to do our own deep dive and see what it's like to get started with Hasura, and then we're going to connect that with the Vue 3 app and see how that experience is. So let's go ahead and get started. So when getting started with any technology, we always hope that the docs is a good place that we can rely on. Hasura docs is basically where I'm just going to get started. And so let's see, let's bump that up a little bit. Okay. So as far as getting started, well, this looks promising. Let's do a getting started. And so a couple of things it looks like. So to get started, we need to deploy our engine. So it looks like Hasura is a way for us to interact with a Postgres database. So it doesn't necessarily set up a database. Like Hasura itself is not a type of database, right? Because common like database types, if we're talking about database types, there's relational databases and like we see hierarchical network, and there's a lot of different ones. And so if we talk about like popular databases right now, SQL is probably one you've heard a lot about, SQLite, but then certainly Postgres, MongoDB, what other ones have I heard about? I mean, Firebase, Redis, Elastic. So, there's a lot of different ways that data is stored and sort of like basically, the different ways that data is stored. And so Postgres is one of the ones I've heard that's been really stable and still considered really well trusted by developers overall. So since I'm totally happy that Hasura is using Postgres, so no concerns there. And then we want to step and test GraphQL. Okay, so certainly, again, I should have highlighted this at first, but we'll be using GraphQL, it looks like, in order to query our data. So this will be different from traditional REST endpoints, and so we'll talk a little bit more about that as we dive in and create our first, our first database. And so we're definitely starting from scratch, because what we'd like to be able to do is get the equivalent of a hello world where, let's say, we could, I guess in this case, let's do like a counter example where we want to save the state of the counter and then being able to just restore that, right? So being able to update the database with the state we want to keep and being able to fetch it back down when we reset. So it looks like Hasura Cloud is the best way to go. Yep, it says using Docker. I will avoid using Docker if I can right now, because that is just added complication. So let's go ahead and start. So first thing first, create an account. All right. So let's see. I'm going to log in using GitHub. This is all development stuff anyway. So it looks like I'm good to go. So it looks like I created one at one point, but honestly, I haven't really played much with it. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete this one. How do I delete? Let's see. Environment, collaborators. Okay. All right, sounds good. Okay, this one is a different one. Okay, got it. Okay, so we have that. Okay, this is one that I'm sharing, but what we want to do is do a new one. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new project here, and we're going to call this counter experiment. And we're gonna do the free tier, definitely. No credit card requirement, great. US East, that's where I'm located. Database setup, and let's do it with Heroku. I have not set up, my experience with setting up my own database is fairly minimal, so let's try to go with the lowest friction possible. And so Heroku is basically another service that helps us to do this kind of thing. So I'm gonna go ahead, let's see, open up one password. Let's see, here we go. Oop. All right, and then we need Heroku login. So here we go, there's a password. I thought I changed this already. There we go, should be this email. Two-factor, no problem. All right, so yeah, authorize Hasura Cloud to Heroku. It works great for me. And so you can see now that it has automatically installed Postgres and created a database URL. Great, that was simple. It's good. So let's go ahead and create that. And so we have our counter experiment now, which is great. Here we have, looks like the ID of the app, and looks like everything's good to go so far. And so the next thing we want to do now, let's check out, oh, it looks like the docs took me out of my flow. So let's go ahead, we had the getting started. Getting started from scratch, we use a sort of cloud. And so now that we've connected it with a Heroku database, the question now is we got to create a project. Yep, we got to this point. And we've connected it. Yep. All right, now it's time to try Hasura out. Make your first GraphQL query or set up your first event trigger. You can navigate to the pro tab to check out the pro features. Okay. So there's a basics course, Hasura. Okay. Great. So let's explore a little bit. So let's launch the console. And so this looks like it's going to be, so it's an interactive way of looking at the database. And so here we can go ahead and click into the data tab. And here it looks like, okay, so you can create tables with SQL, that's fine. But what I want to do is I just want to create a table where we basically track different timestamps at which it's created and the counter, basically like the data for that. So it looks like, we're in, so permissions, summary, schema. Okay, let's create a table. Okay, the table name will be counter. The columns, so the way I think of databases, at least so the little bit of experience I have with databases is the fact that like I think of them like Excel spreadsheets, right? So we have columns. So if you were thinking of it like so if I let's queue up like, there we go, I was gonna say. Okay. So again, if we were to start from a spreadsheet, you can imagine that if our database is a simple, basically you have rows, you have columns. So ideally, what would we want in a column? We want probably something around like current or like saved count. And then each time like we have a record, it would probably increment like some sort of ID. And this is usually the database takes care of this. And then we could like save whichever one that it is. And so knowing that, let's go ahead and create the first column as saved count. And then the type is just going to be an integer, although I realize we need the first one to be an ID, I realize. So this one is, let's say, UUID. And this has to be unique. And so that's the thing, when you're starting to do more database design from what I understand, one of the things you need to make sure is that every row has some sort of unique ID. Especially when you want to be able to like identify certain things and like sort of share them between the two. So unique IDs are very helpful in this regard. And then now we can do save count. Let's see, this is a little small, I realize, on the stream. So let's bump that up. And then this will just be an integer and there's no default value. Then I think that's it. So the primary key is what we'll be associating basically the data with. And in that case, we're looking for the actual ID. So that would be the primary key of this table and how we'll hunt for different things. No foreign keys, no unique keys. So these are database things, and at some point I think it'll probably be worth creating some content around sort of database fundamentals so that we can create more full stack applications with you. But for now, just know that like the primary key is the main thing as far as like basically what's the primary way you want to identify each row. And in this case, it's typically like an ID. And then that's all we need to know for now. So let's say, so if I go ahead and click add table. All right, so it looks like we've created our table for counter. And so it should be totally empty. This is good. Okay. So now the thing is what do we want to insert rows? Let's see. I'll let it automatically. So what if I save the count of 100 and we save it? UUID. Oh, can we just automatically generate for me? I was really hoping it would generate for me. Okay, so I'll just smash a bunch of numbers and letters together. Insert again. And invalid input syntax for UUID. Okay, this is a little confusing. All right, let's modify it. Instead of it, let's just make it auto. I'm just gonna make the ID text at this point. I have no idea what the UUID is that it's looking for. So, okay, text, great. So we'll call the first one dragon, and the save count is 100. So this should work. Great. And so if we browse the row now, we can see just like we talked about, there we go, it's ID of dragon, save count of 100. And so now that we have that, we theoretically now could, let's say, go, so we're in the schema, GraphQL. So think of GraphQL as basically like a playground for going in and checking out, basically like validating the fact that you can test the calls, the functions, and get that you're getting what you expect. And so in this case, it looks like they're giving us a bunch of comments, great. And so what if I want to, okay, this is cool. So when I'm clicking on the here on the left-hand side, let's see, you can kind of see it. Let me bump it over a little bit. You can see here that there is a way for you to click on these things as far as what you're looking for. They even have aggregates and stuff, which basically allow you to do sort of more like, think of it like you're applying calculations to it. That's what aggregates are. And so here then, it looks like we're looking for a counter where the ID, okay, so where ID, so I'm gonna bump it over now. Query variables. So is there a way for me to add new query variables? So how do I say what the ID is? Do I just pass it here? Okay, let's see. Go in the docs. Please tell us more. Okay, we're not gonna go through this whole course. Hopefully it's not. Postgres PowerShore tutorial take. I don't deploy Hasura. Yes, I already have this. Oh, I thought this was what we were walking through. Okay, this is actually probably what I wanted. Launch console, open it, great. Okay, data modeling. Okay, this is great. This is what we were hoping for. Okay, so data modeling. So this is the to-do app they're talking about. And so maintain personal to-dos. I'm going even simpler. I just want a counter. So let's create the table. Okay, this is great. All right, let's bump the docs to the left. And over here, we're gonna take a look at Hasura. All right, so actually I'm gonna go ahead and modify the data that we have here in the data tab. So we had managed to sort of intuitively figured out sort of how it works in the sense that we have an ID that's text, so we had figured that out, although I am curious what the UUID is. So the next question here, we have save count integer, fine, but the created at this I want. That is a good thing. So I do want the date timestamp. So is it just timestamp? And then, let's see, default value. Oh, interesting. Okay, default value now. Okay, great. So it'll automatically, so let me save that now. Great. So now we're browsing our rows. We'll see here. Oh, that's really cool. It retroactively added when it was created at. So it must have saved that property at some point. Very cool. Okay. Data create table, 100%. Great. Explore the users. Okay. So now that we have GraphQL APIs, we're going to take a look and let's see. Copy the following code in the GraphQL interface and then click the play button to execute the query. All right, so we're not going to do that. You know, copy paste is, I know that it can be good for sometimes just seeing something work, but I want to break it down. So we want to do a mutation and not just a query. So this is the difference here, right? So you can see here, the reason why it starts out with a query is because it's just basically what it is. But if you see here, if we switch to mutation and add it, it'll follow the syntax we have here. So let's go ahead and follow the kind of, let's try to deconstruct this, shall we? So here the mutation is insert users, objects, and what it's inserting is the ID, the name, and then it's returning the number of affected rows. It's based on what I'm pulling from this. So my guess here is we could do something. Wow, why can't I? Okay, enter. Let's see, what are the commands here? Can I autocomplete? Okay, none of these are working. Ah, okay. So control space is autocomplete. So we are inserting counter, great. And where the objects that we're inserting is an array. So it's multiple objects. So, whoa, okay. Okay, yep. And then we're gonna do ID, and this time we'll add a unicorn. And then we have the current count, which will this time be 200. Okay, and so does it not like this? This is not a valid, let me zoom out a little bit. It does not like, it's not defined by type count. It saves count. Oh, good. Okay, cool. So this means that it validated. So I remember incorrectly that it's not current count and that it's saves count. Very nice. I like the fact that it validated. That's a great developer experience right there. Insert counter here must have a selection of subfields. Okay, that makes sense because what it's basically saying, from what I can tell, is that here you're going to say basically what is going to be returned. So the number of affected rows is basically what's coming back. And so now if we test this out and hit play, we'll see that we get a response in the right-hand side where it says that the data, we inserted counter and it was affected rows 1. And so if I'm not mistaken now, we can generate, yep. So if we want to, oh good, they're going to teach us how to query. Excellent. All right, let's learn how to query. Commands, control space. All right, I want to learn about the counter. And I want to learn, so within the counter, basically, so this is where I think we can talk a little bit about GraphQL now versus REST. So traditionally when we hit REST endpoints, it's usually constructed by a URL, and the backend, basically, we have to tell, like the backend, the front end makes a request to an endpoint. So again, the equivalent here, this is gonna not be right, but if it was like AP v1 / like counter, and then just be like, and then like you would query like say like the ID equals dragon. Let's say for example, this would be an example of like a traditional REST endpoint, where you're saying, hey, fetch in the counter API, fetch an ID of dragon and return to me basically whatever it is you deem worthy to return to me. And so the reason this is very popular is because it's actually pretty simple as far as like the handoff, because you request something and whatever the backend sends you is whatever you get, and then you deal with it accordingly. The reason why GraphQL I think has gained a lot of popularity is because it basically allowed the front end to now have a more flexible way of saying what they wanted, without having to say, oh, we need the backend to create a brand new endpoint that only contains these fields. Because as you can imagine, when it's something small like this, it doesn't really matter if you return all the fields. Like the data payload is fairly negligible. But when you're requesting like a large amount of data, and let's say that each object has a lot of attributes, but you only need like 2, it is. I mean, I don't think it can be debated. Like that's a waste, right? Because the user is never going to use the rest of those attributes. They're only going to use the 2. And so, as you can see here with the query, what you're doing is you're basically shaping the data that you want. So here we want basically a data type of counter, and what do we want within it? Well, as you can see here, there's only 3 properties, which makes sense right now because we have the created at, the ID, and the saved count. And so to show you what I mean, if I go ahead and just let's do ID, created at, and let's do saved count. If we run this right now, we should get, as you can see here, we have both of the data, basically the rows of data that we wanted, in this case ID and ID dragon and ID unicorn, both came back to us. But the difference, but here you can see that it is modeled based on what we requested, which is ID, created at, and save count. And let's say we had a view though that like said, I don't need created at, I literally just need the save count. Well, it would be as simple as deleting this piece, and then when you sort of rerun it again, you can see that the return data has now been shaped correctly. Now, so for those wondering, it's not necessarily like who's the best. I think like all tooling, there are situations where GraphQL can be very powerful and makes sense for a team. But there's a reason why REST has been around for so long and why it's still used by a lot of companies is because there is a simplicity to it, as far as like being able to just say, this is what you get and this is what we deal with. And for those who have done backend development, it's actually, like, to be clear, it's not that it's difficult to spin up additional endpoints, right? Like if we wanted an endpoint where it contained ID and save count, and then an endpoint where it's ID created at and save count, like as far as the backend engineer is concerned, this is fairly trivial. But it's just one of those, like, as you know, certain applications scale, does it necessarily make sense to like have that sort of piece of like basically that additional infrastructure? Does it make sense to have all these individual endpoints every time that the front end needs has a slightly modified payload? So GraphQL, from my experience with it, is particularly powerful when you know that the data has basically these shared properties that like can be related across. And so what I mean by that is that, let's say you have like a newspaper, and you have the author object. Well, in some cases where you use author, you're gonna want like the name and like the Twitter and like the photo. Other cases you just need the name and the link. And so being able to then sort of dynamically sort of build that on the fly is quite nice if the backend can build a shared sort of data hierarchy that matches well to the GraphQL. And so can't get too much more in the weeds in terms of that. I think that would deserve a whole separate video, and probably someone else who's far more knowledgeable on the topic than I am. But that's just basically a high-level overview of why GraphQL and REST are different and why it's not perfect. Like I wouldn't take this and go like we should convert all our backend to GraphQL. There are reasons and times where GraphQL is actually harder to do because the backend does have to do a fair bit of data molding in order for GraphQL to work correctly. And so if anything, if you're like, oh, I really want to try this GraphQL stuff, I would say it's better when you're doing things with newer projects so that you have that chance to experiment and there's sort of less commitment from the team as a whole to like easily go, yes, this worked, yes, this didn't work, and yes, let's start migrating some stuff towards it, or this did not work for us at all, and let's abandon it and move back to what we were already doing. Okay, so now that we have this stuff, this is great. We've learned how to query the data, we've learned how to mutate the data, and so this is most of what we need actually for our counter app. But I do want to go ahead and check out the rest of the docs if I could find them. Okay, here we go. So I just want to make sure we didn't see anything. So, okay, this is interesting. There's something called subscription. This is a new concept to me. And so what it says is that the initial query will return the existing results in the response, and then insert it, and then, okay, so let's just see what happens. And so an active subscription query will keep returning the latest set of results depending on the query. That's interesting. So it almost seems like a watch functionality, like if I'm thinking of it as like a Vue thing. And so it's like whenever something new is coming in, I guess this would be nice if you, I don't know, actually I don't even know a scenario for this, but if you're sort of having some sort of real-time application where you wanted to see when things are being updated, a subscription would be nice as a way to deal with this. So, okay, this is cool. Now, let's see. They want to do a to-dos table. I'm not worried about that. I want to see, yep, explore with to-dos. That's fine. We learned to query mutate. I really want to just learn, okay, relationships. So this is good. We can run through this another time, but this is getting a little too much in the weeds. I really just want the MVP of how I would run the query. Data transformations. Not worried about this right now. Relationship to the user. Yep. Authorization, role-based. That's interesting for another time. Once again, not gonna worry about that. So this is fairly complex. I don't want to dive into this right now. Okay, so let me just Google this instead, because it looks like they're really getting they're getting in the weeds a lot. Vue Js GraphQL Resources with Hasura. Okay, let's see. GraphQL for Vue development videos. Interesting. Okay, this is cool. I did not know. So it looks like they have a Vue GraphQL course. Very neat. But I should be able to find what I want with fair ease. I shouldn't need creating, yes, connect. Here we go. This is what I want. All right, let's see. Come on. Connecting to the API. Oh, it doesn't link the heading? That's lame. All right, whatever. Connecting to, there we go. We have our query, we have mutations. Okay, yep, so that's interesting. That's how you do the variables. Not worried about that. So they want to do Apollo client, Apollo cache in memory, Apollo link, HTTP, and yarn. Okay, let's try it. All right, let's do this. So we're gonna open up a brand new project. Actually, what am I talking about? We are experimenting right now, so clear. All right, so we're going into my Vue labs. Let's go to my V3 labs. And let's play around with some stuff. Let's see, this is, I don't remember what this is, but I'm gonna commit it because clearly I worked on it at some point. Look into card sliders. Okay. So let's see, yarn add Vue Apollo. Okay, I'm just gonna grab this whole thing and then let it install all the dependencies. And then, wow, there's a lot of stuff we need to do. I guess this makes sense because right now what we're trying to do is we need to actually instantiate a full Apollo client. Okay. Although, gosh, that does feel a little interesting to me because really I'd prefer not to, like, this is forcing me to opt into a lot. And so when I'm thinking of data sources, while it's nice that it's using GraphQL, I would say that, like, if I were in an existing app where I'm comfortable with, I mean, again, like, for example, I'm most familiar with Vuex. And so in this case, like, I'm hoping there would be just like, call it a URL we could hit. And then once we hit that URL, we would get said thing. And so let's take a look at least at what the code is like. Maybe I can skip some of this, and maybe it's using GraphQL as a way to just sort of manage the state on the whole, but I would prefer not to. Okay, add movie, GraphQL, okay, that's fine, I understand that syntax. I'll explain it when we get to it. Methods, submit, this data, this Apollo mutate. Okay, this doesn't make sense to me though, because this doesn't tell me how Hasura was connected, because all this did was set up GraphQL for me. Okay, here we go. HTTP, okay, this is what we want. So CRUD operations. Okay, I'm right. I am totally right. So let's go ahead and open this up, start the dev server. So again, if I go into my GraphQL, all right, so I'll explain once I get to it. Projects, counter experiment, launch console. Oh, I was already, okay, that's what this green button thing was. Okay, so here is our post URL. I would imagine I need some sort of, some sort of authentication, and I can just randomly post to it. To create an instance of Apollo client in memory cache, I don't really care about that. I want to know, okay, HTTP link here. Here's the GraphQL URI, fine. And then, yeah, I don't, there's so many, so this is sometimes one of my complaints when it comes to tutorials is that if it introduces you to so many tools at once that, like for example, for me who I haven't used Apollo enough to necessarily feel comfortable with adding all this stuff, it basically blocks us from learning the important thing, which is how do we connect to Hasura. I'm confident that my instinct is right on this, that we don't need, what is yelling at me? That we don't need all this stuff. I'm fairly confident in this. So I need to do some cleanup apparently, because slider is being called. I'm just gonna disable slider. Can I disable it somewhere? Where's it being called? Yes. Can I just disable it? It's still linting? God, that's annoying. I really don't want to deal with this right now. Dun dun dun. I'm dealing with another more severe problem. Okay, great, finally done. Okay, so I see we have some new people joining. Hello, hello. We are in the midst of trying to figure out how. So we've learned at this point how to set up our Hasura data table with Hasura Cloud, and it was actually fairly straightforward from like setting up columns and fetching data. We've learned how to get data from the GraphQL endpoint, but now I'm sort of looking through the docs for a way to we want to now actually connect it to our Vue 3 app. And so right now I looked at some of the resources here regarding GraphQL with the Vue front end. But one of the things they have here that they have you do is the fact that we need to apparently add all of these things to make it work. And that to me, I think when it comes to tutorials is a little bit of a, call it a code smell, or I don't know, call it education smell. Like I understand why, because so to defend the reason why this tutorial uses Apollo is because Apollo is the go-to solution for state management when it comes to GraphQL. And I am positive there are a ton of developer ergonomics when it comes to using that long term, as far as Apollo either automatically fetching things and just sort of less boilerplate code. But when it comes to an MVP of I just want to connect my Vue 3 app to Hasura, this is getting in my way at this point. So I am just looking for a way to call the API. That's all I want to do. I don't want to do anything else. Okay, so what the heck? What's the worst that'll happen? All right, so here's a post. And so inside of labs, we're gonna go ahead and do this. We're gonna create a button and we're gonna call it call Hasura API. So let's make sure that shows up. Are we on the wrong page? I am on, here we go, we're on lab. Oh, nope, I don't wanna do it here. Not here, do it on home. Okay, we got a lot of stuff on home. I need to delete this stuff. Yep, there we go, okay. Button, call Hasura. What font are you using in Vue? Hello, King Boompy. The font I'm using is Operator Mono. It's from typography.com, so if you're looking for it there, it is a paid font. But if you're looking for one that's sort of more similar that I really like is the Fira Nerd code font. That one is should be completely free, and you can download it. Yeah, so I use that for my terminal, I believe, so to help with the icons, that kind of stuff. But yeah, hope that helps. Let me know if you have any other questions. Okay, so here we want to call Hasura. Okay, call Hasura here. I'm gonna go ahead and click call Hasura. That's what we're gonna call the method. And I'm just gonna delete all this boilerplate inside of setup because right now we're not worried about that. I am wiping all that out. Okay, so what I do want to do is we're gonna go ahead and again, no need for the composition API right now because again we know pretty much what we want to do and no need to complicate this. We just have a method here and we're just gonna I guess, do I have Axios already in this project? If not, I think I probably should just install. Oh, I do. Great. So I can in here, wrong page. Here, okay. Import Axios from Axios, and then we can say axios.post to our GraphQL. I'm pretty sure this is not going to work. But then after we get the response and then log the response. That's all I want you to do. Okay, so let's go ahead and this is a little weird, so let's switch it up. So boom, 2/3, and boom over to the third. Okay, you're welcome, King Boopy. All right, so we're gonna click, and oh, we got something interesting. We got data. Oh, okay. Well, it was a 200 error, not enough input. Okay, so we've learned here that we actually got a response. The config was correct, but we still don't know how to make a recall. So let's see, authorization, authentication, jump. What's next? Yup. I went to this resource and I don't see anything. Yep. V2 guide. Okay. I already understand the premise of GraphQL. What I want to do is be able to just connect it. Let's do this GraphQL tutorial. So unfortunately, I'm going to leave the docs now because I'm a little confused. And it should... Oh, wait. I'm not on a GraphQL. I'm on a, sorry, Hasura tutorial. Just give me, like, data modeling. I mean, this is good. They have a lot of the resources up front, but I clearly auth 0. Deploy, React app configuration, I don't really care. npm install, URL, domain ID, auth client ID. Oh, this is frustrating. Because what you want, right? So what my head is thinking is we need something to, like, the API call is going to be past something as far as the GraphQL request. That much I'm familiar with. But then after that, then what? So, I mean, I'll look on the React one to see if this is any better. Boilerplate setup. Yep. Once again, it's entirely dependent on Apollo. There's a part of me that doesn't want to, like, what if I didn't want to use Apollo? I have a hard time believing this is required. I think this is maybe I'm being stubborn. But it just seems like if I could give you everything you needed, like the request itself should still be fine. Fetch. Okay. GraphQL client. Apollo client. And then use subscription GQL. Notify. Loading use subscription. Okay. I mean, we already knew that. I mean, I will give this another 5 minutes because, gosh, I feel like it shouldn't be this difficult to do it without. Do Hasura without Apollo. Like, it seems interesting to me that integrate queries in the app. Yeah, but it doesn't say like you have to use. That's what I don't like. Hasura basics, sure. All right, let me bump this over so everyone can see. I know what I want to do. I just think it's weird that I should be able to pass like the GraphQL as like, you know, an endpoint. Set up permissions, create auth app. I mean, fine. Create actions. Sure, I mean, this is nice, but I still can't integrate anything. All right, well, it hasn't been quite 5 minutes, but for the sake of making progress as much as, oh wait, what's this? Write a REST MPI. What's this? Hold up. Oh, yeah, no, I don't want to create a whole REST API just to do what I want to do. Fine, we will for now, we will accept the fact that they want us to do Apollo. That's basically what I'm accepting for now. It really wish it wasn't as such. All right, tutorial boilerplate setup. Here we go. Bum, 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 bum. Oh, interesting. There's a boilerplate. I don't want the boilerplate. Nice that they have videos. I'm gonna have to check those out later to see how good those are. But all right, these are the official docs. So let's run it. So it's npm install, but we've been using yarn, so we're just gonna make sure we add all the right. This looks like the same list I saw earlier, but just to be safe, we're gonna go ahead and do that. Okay, everything's added. Let's keep going. All right, so if we go inside of main.js, boy oh boy, we got to add a lot of boilerplate. Client, link, HTTP. All right, I'm going to tell you what I think based on when I see this. So the client makes sense as far as like this is what we're interacting with, and you'll see us importing basically helper methods and stuff from it. Oh, I just realized. Oh, hopefully the mic's coming okay. And then HTTP link, this looks like it will be a way for us to fetch things. And then Apollo cache memory, it looks like it's a way for things not to break. And so let's go ahead and just grab all this stuff inside of here and save it. So get headers is a function which has an empty object that is the headers. The token will be the window local storage Apollo token. If the token exists, then pass the bearer token, otherwise return the headers. Okay, so basically if it's empty, or sorry, if there is authentication, pass the authentication, otherwise return the empty object. That's what that's doing. Create a new HTTP link. So this is saying where is the URI. So in this case, we know our URI is gonna be, it's gone. I'm already logged in. Counter experiment launch console. Great. Okay, so here is our URI right here. And get headers, fine. Client new Apollo client, fine. Okay. I'm clearly bitter about this. That it's requiring me to do so much setup for this. New render route. Okay, so it's telling me not to do anything differently because I'm already mounting. So now we need the Vue Apollo plugin into Vue. Why wouldn't this? Why would you do all the setup first? Okay, fine. And then so now we actually need Vue Apollo to connect everything. Oh gosh, I wonder if this will break because I'm on Vue 3. We're gonna find out. Then Vue.Apollo here, then drop here, Vue.then, and Apollo provider. Then Apollo provider is here. Great. And then, so now use routers, use Apollo provider. Okay. So, yep, they explained that the HTTP link is to connect Apollo client with the GraphQL server. Makes sense. Yep, okay. So, Vue is not defined. Right. Create app. Where is that? Vue.use. Okay. Vue Apollo. This might not work. Is there a use plugin? Alright, so this is a Vue.use in Vue 3. This is a popular thing apparently. Alright, so let's see. Let's see what LogRocket has to say about Vue.use. They don't. MyApp.use. Okay, makes sense. So what we would do now is we would declare const myApp equals, yep. Although we're already using the plug-in, so maybe it's more like this. Wait, Vue Apollo is what we wanted. Like that. So did everything break? Yeah, didn't like that at all. Womp womp. That's not what I was looking for. Though I'm not really sure why I'm looking here. I should really look here real quick. Plugins, using plugin. Yep, you can use .use app that create root. Then you can utilize plugins from that. So, oh, all right, King Boomy. So Apollo client, think of it like basically Apollo itself is basically like a GraphQL version of Vuex. And so the Apollo client is basically, think of it like a part of Apollo that allows you to basically interact with the Apollo server. So think of it, I guess the rough equivalent in my head at this point is that when you have like Vuex, you interact with the Vuex store with actions, mutations, and stuff. And so like the thing that allows you to send those like commands over to Vuex and do the things, that I believe is what the Apollo client actually does. The only thing though is that looks like Vue Apollo Vue 3 may not be ready for this just yet. Go to installation, Vue add Apollo, great. GraphQL tag GraphQL client, great. New Apollo client. All right, so here, new Apollo client. That's good. Link, cache, new memory cache, fine. IDE configuration, not worried about that. Okay, interesting. Okay, looks like they already have import Vue from Vue. Ah, okay, that's what I messed up. So it does work that way. So Vue.use Apollo client. So it's basically so at this point it looks like it's the plugin that allows us to do it. So should have gone to the official docs as to begin with. It really doesn't like use. Why does it not like it? Oh, well, this is the Vue 2 version. Where's the okay. Hold up. This is updated in 2019. That is more than a year ago at this point. Vue Apollo composable. No, this still uses the Vue instance. So I am stuck. I'm stuck only because I'm trying to force this into Vue 3. But this is so sad. This is, well, okay, so one, this is why we recommend those who have existing projects who are already in Vue 2 not to migrate to Vue 3 until you make sure all your dependencies are up to date, because clearly things are not working the way we want. Again, what's frustrating to me is that we should be able to just post things and it should just work. And so as far as fetching, here's your query, and the insistence on using Apollo, I think, personally feels like a mistake. Like the smallest one you can get as a student at this point trying to learn this is to simply get those of us who have like any sort of web application development experiment are familiar with fetching data and at least like doing some sort of Axios like request, some sort of Ajax request. But this requirement that we use Apollo, I feel like doesn't make sense. Oh, which is so sad. Okay. Official tutorial. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. All right. Let's we try out the queries. All right, boilerplate setup. All right, let's take a look at their boilerplate, I guess. Oh boy, boy, boy. Let's see what's in here. So open this up in VS Code. All right, let's take a look. Vue config, this looks pretty familiar. Import Vue from Vue, Vue use auth plugin, render. So this is definitely Vue 2 syntax. No question about that. Yep, 2.6. And so yeah, let's, boo. All right, for now, abandon the Vue 3 integration and let's just see how this piece works. So we have that there. Let's go back to the official docs for Hasura. Simple login as to load the load to do app. I don't really care about that right now. Okay, let's do this once more. So we'll open this up. Let's install all of our dependencies. Oh, that's not good. There we go. Install all the dependencies. And let's at least just make sure the tutorial works. Frustrating though. Vue Apollo plugin, Vue Apollo provider. Yeah, so as far as the client goes, again, so whoa, that's not what I wanted. The client instance, just as a refresher, is this sort of like create the layer in which things will interact with one another. That's what it's really for. And so, man, it is not liking something. Something is breaking. I don't know what all this stuff is. It is spinning. This doesn't look good. 2 warnings deprecated in C++. Oh boy. Just make sure all the dependencies are updated. Okay. You know what? Let's I clearly need to do a little bit more. Oh, 994 vulnerabilities. That's not great. All right, so the boilerplate is a bit out of date. Okay. So we've learned a couple things as far as this stream session together. One, we've learned that Hasura actually is really nice in terms of getting things set up in a way that like allows us to easily create a project. So I'm gonna go ahead and log in and show. So what we've done here is inside of our counter experiment, we've created a brand new table that's here, right? And we have a data. We've learned how to create the table with like the different aspects that we create, that we desire with fair amount of ease. So, you know, just as like a refresher, we can insert rows. Basically, as you can see here, it'll automatically populate the created at. And we can certainly modify our columns if we want to add different properties. And so this is fairly, to me, like fairly intuitive because you don't necessarily have to learn all the SQL for like inserting rows and then making sure things update correctly. Like the GUI, basically the graphical user interface is fairly straightforward. And I do like this a lot. And then the fact that we can go into the GraphQL playground and go through and actually like basically check out how these things work. So in this case, for example, like we talked about, we can query something. So we can query like the counter and we can say, okay, I want the ID and also give me like the saved count. And then once you run that, it'll give everything that's inside of the table. And so you can imagine if we could actually successfully fetch this with Vue 3, like it would be fairly easy to just loop over this and print this out. And then vice versa, if we wanted to update something, let's say we update the count and we want to make sure it's updated, then we would be running a mutation where we have, let's see, so we have like, for example, we have insert counter, and we could be like, well, we can insert a new counter with an ID of, in this case, so let's do Phoenix, and then, oh, it doesn't like what I'm talking about, interesting. And then we have a saved count of 300. Now it doesn't like this because it found string Phoenix, but do I need a, nope, didn't like that either. Insert counter. Oh, insert counter affected rows. Oh, got it. Yeah, there's that syntax where you have objects and then, yeah, here's the row. Then you say ID. Okay, here we go. Sorry. So then here is where we would define Phoenix. And so we're basically passing it this piece where our current, no, that is created at is automatically generated at. So save count is going to be 300. My only thing though is now, what if I want to make this, so I guess, so if we ran this, for example, you see that one row has been affected. And then when we go ahead and now query set counter, again with ID and save count, you'll see now that Phoenix has been injected. So this is nice, and so we know that our database is being upgraded. It feels fairly intuitive from like a save update. The only problem is clearly we ran into some problems when it came to actually being able to hook up this piece into the application, because all the tutorials, at least the docs, from what we can tell, have a heavy dependency on Apollo GraphQL. And again, I still feel like there's something weird about that, because there should be a way to just post to a URL, make the payload the GraphQL response, and then like get what you want. But clearly, I have not been successful at finding said docs. So be interesting to take a look at that and find out more about that later. But in the meantime, yeah, so this is, I think, a wrap for this stream. Thanks for everyone who's watching, and I will see you in the next one, where hopefully we can do a little bit more once I figured out where the hiccup is in terms of why it's unable to fetch things, or frankly where the docs are to do sort of simple queries rather than relying on Apollo. So I'll see you all next time. Thanks.